Man's best friend had just become mankind's worst nightmare. Here's your look at the NECA Toys The Thing Ultimate Dog Creature Action Figure. From The Thing, John Carpenter's acclaimed 1982 slow-build horror film classic, deep in the Antarctic Circle, an isolated research team finds something that's been waiting for them for over 100,000 years, something with the ability to become one of them, or, as they discover, an organic creature. From the ordinary dog to morphing monstrosities, fully articulated figure comes included with over 25 interchangeable pieces to customize your dog creature for maximum horror. Comes in collectors-friendly 5-panel packaging with open front flap. When it comes to this dog creature, you better hope that you can play dead. If not, you'll be its next target. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the dog creature from The Thing, let's grab the tape measure and see how big this is. Now, it's going to be really hard to kind of figure out exactly how big these things are. I mean, really, we only have really the basic dog, and then you have whatever this thing is over onto the side. If you were looking at, say, just the dog alone, from the front of its snout, or I guess the front of its paws, to the back of its tail, you're looking at the actual dog being 5 inches in length. Or it's going to be about 14 centimeters long. And I think somebody better grab his blowtorch. Here's what the dog creature looks like with what I feel to be the most fitting figure of MacCready. Here's what they look like with the Station Survival. The only thing, of course, missing in this equation, although will be coming out when I put this guy on display along with the dog creature, is, of course, his flamethrower. This video, I hope, is not only just a review, but also a cautionary tale of things you're going to have to be extremely careful with when it comes to the dog creature, as I had, unfortunately, 2 mishaps while trying to attach things on and trying to remove things from the figures. Now, again, you get technically 2 things. You get the main dog, and then you get basically this monstrosity off to the side. If we look at just the dog alone, I can tell you one thing that's already gone wrong with this figure is the fact that his front paw broke. I've currently got it with some MAC tack, some clear tack. I'm just going to remove the tack for right now. I put this in place just to show you also. It uses ball joints. Now, I had already a problem with getting everything basically attached to this version of the dog creature, but the actual dog alone does have removable paws. These paws are actually on ball joints. They move up and down. Of course, you can rotate the paws all the way around. But also as well, you remove these in order to attach other tentacles, basically. There's a lot of customization that's happening here with the dog, but unfortunately, though, they did use sort of tan-colored plastic, and without really realizing it was going to have a tolerance as high as it was, when I went to try to carefully pull the ball joint, and I'm not even just pulling it like this, I'm kind of wiggling it back and forth because I knew, of course, anything that's going to be tight is telling you right away, don't pull it right out. Well, I wiggled it, and I thought it was giving way, until eventually the entire paw gave way. And you can see it broke right off. This type of plastic that they used for the pegs is not only on this case, but one of the other things that go also attached onto this creature uses this same sort of tan plastic. And it seems to be a case that's very prone to breaking. Again, I've just put myself a little bit of MAC tack, got some clear tack here just to kind of conceal the fact that the paw was broken at the time of the opener of this review. I'm just going to put that there for right now, just to at least give us somewhat of a serviceable look that the dog doesn't look to be broken. The dog itself, for what it is nicely done. Really isn't much in the way of posability. You can rotate the back of the tail. The front of the head is also going to be on a ball joint. That's really nice to see. And again, like the paws would be able to independently move back and forth. Just, again, be careful. I can't stress this enough. I really should have gone and heated this. I've made a few passes already with the hairdryer, thinking that anything really, again, with ball joints, very, very careful just to run a few passes with a hairdryer. But I guess I wasn't running enough passes. And like I said, the plastic unfortunately broke. What I might just end up ultimately doing, though, I feel like for the customization of turning this to creature, yes, you can remove the head. And for all intents and purposes, you can also remove these also as well. But I'm just probably going to I'm going to glue this paw in place, make it permanently a fixture. And I'm just going to only thing really I'm going to be changing about this is probably just going to be the head. Before, actually, I did want to change out the things that are on it. You also get yourself an instruction sheet. The instruction sheet is broken up into basically 4 corners. It tells you the basic dog and how the things can be removed. So, for example, if you want to remove, say, just the head and the collar piece, you can do that. You can also, down here, this is the part that had me pulling the arms or the legs off for the dog to add these additional antennas. These little tentacles can attach where those sockets would be on the front of the dog. Unfortunately, though, removing those paws, at least one of the arms, broke right off. And down below there's the other configuration as well. We're all going to talk about that more so in a moment. So the dog itself, other than just being a really nice looking canine, I think they've done a nice job of sculpting this, does also again transform. What you get is off to the side here. I don't know why it's actually off to the side, but you get this fur piece here. This is basically a top that's going to go on top of the top. I say on top of the dog. It goes basically on top of the dog's torso. What was required on your part is having to add these extra legs. These legs all attach by ball joints. They all attach in here. And again, I heated everything as best I could with a hairdryer just to make sure that the plastic was going to be forgiving enough when I popped these all in place. They seem to be all on hinge joints, so not only can you move them back and forth with ball joints, but you can also hinge the joints here as well. Nice looking top torso. And again, you got these cool little straggling strands of plastic all sticking out the top of the fur as well. This is going to basically go over top of the dog. So what we'll do first, before we move on to, again, this, is the more elaborate of the 2 pieces. We're going to remove the dog's head. Now, I have already removed it a couple of times, so I'm having no difficulties there. But again, you can see that they're using kind of this flesh tone plastic. I don't know why. Maybe it just happens to be this particular set. It just maybe happens to be the case I was just a little too hard with it. But I noticed like this plastic buckles very quickly and also snaps if it's small enough. So just be careful of that. So what you basically do is you get this body of the dog and then you get this collar piece that then replaces this part of the dog's head. This collar piece basically just fits over top of its body. I'm going to plug this in place as best as I can get it. And then you basically get this really interesting looking peeled back collar for the dog. It doesn't just end there. You get also as well a tongue piece. Now the tongue sticks in whether you decide you want to use the jaw or not. Just plug that in place. There we go. Now you can have it like this, and then from there you can then just attach the top piece. I know I'm sure the leg's going to fall off, but we're just going to snap that in place. It doesn't even so much snap in place. It basically just clamps over top of its existing body. Yes, I'm definitely going to glue that paw on. So once that's then in place, you can either have it configured like this, or what you can also do too, just put the dog down for a second. You also get sort of a skeletal dog that has basically the fur and everything else peeled away. This is what the dog would have looked like. This is what the dog looks like now. Dog's definitely playing dead. You can see that this one's really neat because not only does it have a really slimy look to it, but it also does have an open and closed mouth. It does open and close. And when you are putting this actually onto the body, you'll use and really rely on the tongue. Just take the head and see there's a hole on the back of it. It slides basically up the tongue and it then wedges in place. So the tongue really is the thing that kind of keeps everything together. And now you've got yourself a very, very disgusting, gory looking dog. Again, the only thing that's unfortunate about this is the fact that this leg had to break off the way that it did. But I know, again, it's just going to be a case I'm going to be gluing it in place. The one I want to have, I almost in a way might find myself, in fact, probably getting a second set of the dog creature. That way, not only could I have just a regular dog sort of surrounding this creature as it's being formed, but then I can also have the other dog looking like this. And if that's the case, I'm just going to glue one of them, and I'm probably just going to have the regular, normal human dog, a regular, creature dog next to it. So that's that dog. Now we move on to the more complicated matter. You get this. Now, this relied a lot on well, first of all, you get all these extra tentacles. I'm supposing some of these were planned for replacing out the front legs of the dog, and then these would just be popped in place. Just pop in those whole sockets. But you get these other pieces as well. Between this and all the holes that are then on this creature, you can kind of decide for yourself where everything really will go. A few little assembly pieces that I had to actually add on to the dog. This whole front stump piece had to be plugged in place right here via the connected ball joints. Then from there, I just added the antennas, the little tentacles here. And I also added a really gross looking tongue there on the front of its stump as well. It's very similar, in fact, actually, to kind of peeled back collar that's on the other dog there as well. And then I had to also add all these extra tentacles here too. These all plug in basically the exact same way. So if I just flip this upside down so you can kind of see the undercarriage of the dog. See, there's a couple of holes still there I haven't yet actually added. So those extra extra pieces that I don't really have a place for just yet, basically all plug in the exact same way. They seem to be using all the same socket holes. So again, you just plug these in place. The reason why I didn't actually plug this one in was just because that's basically the underbody of the dog. And in order to have it basically sitting flat, yes, you can rotate things about the dog, but to really have it properly flat, I just decided to leave some of these actually off. Here's the other casualty that unfortunately I had. Remember that tan colored plastic that we were talking about? Well, this part right here, from what I'm at least reading from the instructions, I'll bring back the instructions in a second, this piece actually attached right there. And what I tried to do was I tried to remove it, and I did remove it successfully. But then when putting it back in, I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but the plastic has buckled. It's not even just a case either. Like, I've gone back and I've heated this up as best as again I could have with the hairdryer, softening up what I thought the sock was good enough that I could then just put this back in place. Because I think this piece right here is supposed to pop right off. And always is the case. It's supposed to be leaving behind the ball joint, but you know it never really does. It leaves behind the ball joint, and then if I just put this dog back down, the second configuration, bringing back in the instructions, which would be, so we're looking at Form 2. So here's Form 2. Here's basically, gives you kind of a rough idea of where the tentacles should all go. There's that front stump piece for the dog. It plugged in, again, I'm guessing kind of right around here. But then there's this piece, which is essentially the largest of the things that come included with the dog creature. From what I'm seeing, at least, it's supposed to untab. See, you're supposed to remove this piece, which was, again, like this leg right here. And then the peg that's supposed to be left behind is supposed to then plug into this contraption, giving you this look right here. Well, again, removing it, it seemed to buckle the plastic. I don't know if you can actually see it. The plastic stem is completely bent. It actually looks like it's a little bit marred as well. So again, I could leave it off. I could ultimately just glue it back in place. It's basically going to just be get around from the other dog here. It's basically going to just plug in place like this. And then that will give you the fully finished dog. Or what you can also do too, if I'm reading the instructions correctly, once you leave that off, you get this piece right here, which is basically the dog's hind legs. It actually looks like the dog is birthing. You can see it does have, again, some really gnarly details done. You got some really cool fangs, a very bloodied. It kind of looks like a cooked chicken. Actually, this looks more like a cooked chicken. From what I'm gathering, at least, this is supposed to plug in. It's supposed to plug in, I think, like this, and then the dog is supposed to be like, oh, or maybe it's supposed to be like this. But either way, it's supposed to plug onto the back where that peg hole was. And unfortunately, I just can't do it until I try to. Maybe if I can remove the plastic. I have to really decide for myself how I want this really to be displayed, and then from there I can decide then, okay, maybe I might just glue this in place. Because again, I think it's supposed to go right around here if I'm looking at the instructions correctly, or maybe it's supposed to be like that, for example. So this piece, other than just being detached from the rest of the dog, does have its long hind legs. The hind legs themselves actually do have ball joints or hinge joints, so you can move them around. You can move, in fact, actually the dog's back feet. You can also rotate those also all the way around. Some decent posability. And then you also got additional connecting points, so if you want to add some additional tentacles, you can also add those in there as well. But I think, like, again, this part is supposed to be the part that plugs in. So if looking at the instructions, it's basically supposed to be plugged in like that, just on the back of the dog's body. Overlooking, unfortunately, those two little mishaps, the rest of the dog that at least is mutated looks really cool. Really, really neat the way they've actually done this. There's, again, a lot of little fidgety points on the dog, so you're really going to have to be careful of it. I mean, again, based on really just the instructions, I kind of put the antennas basically where I thought they were supposed to go. The longest ones and the thickest ones actually do also have a wire frame. So you can bend those around as well. It certainly does take up a lot more real estate space when you're putting this on the shelf. But the dog, what's left of it at least, you can see does have missing ears. It has some really cool, really neat looking sculpting. I love the way they've actually added kind of a clear coat finish there as well, and some really gnarly looking blood also added in there as well. The flat part of this, basically, again, you're going to have like a little hole where their teeth. Everything basically on this is finished. There's no real sections where I can actually look at the dog creature and say, well, gee, NECA just skimped on sculpting and paint. Everything actually on this is finished and looks really good. I just wish that assembly of this was a lot easier than what it was actually. Because if not for that, I'm always disappointed if anything happens to break, especially if I really do want to be able to present it to you guys and talk a little bit about the figure. I mean, having a bit of a bummer like this by a buckling plastic, and certainly having something that's breaking off from the front of the dog, I mean, that's always a bit of a bummer. Obviously, I don't want to be showing you guys that kind of stuff. But still, again, like this part's going to go basically onto the top like this. I might just very well glue it. I don't really know. I know ultimately I'm just going to probably be buying out myself a second set of these just so I can have a little more of a finished dog that isn't broken. I'm going to very tread carefully when it comes to getting that second dog creature. And then this one, again, I'm just going to kind of use for like just kind of extra pieces like around my display as well. Now, again, there's a lot of articulation on just this also dog as well, because not only do you have a ball joint here for the neck, you can then move the head. That's going to be also on a hinge joint. It does move up and down and, of course, back and forth as well. The dog's actual head does rotate also all the way around. It does open and close. Then when you get to this body, this part here is on a ball joint. And basically all the things that I've added are on additional ball joints too. So this moves back and forth, up and down. The actual little tongue part that actually does rotate, that's also on a ball joint. And really, for all intents and purposes too, all these antenna pieces that I've added, these little, again, leaching out roots from the creature, all technically do move because they're all on ball joints. So again, you can rotate them up if you want, you can rotate them down. And that continues on, if I get my hand out of the way, continues its merry little way all across the rest of the creature. So like the back of the body does move, the hind leg, if that is that what's left at least of the hind leg, maybe that's probably likely the front leg. That does move on a ball joint. This is on a hinge joint, so be careful of that. This is also on a hinge joint, and again, that moves back and forth. And then what would have been normally the extra leg, that extra leg on the back here, would have moved back and forth. Again, it kind of looks like a barbecued chicken. It's a really interesting looking creature, but a lot of problems, unfortunately. I really shouldn't say a lot of problems. There only really was 2 problems. I had the dog's leg break off. Let's just put the mouth back in place here. I had, the dog's one leg break off. That's an easy fix. I'm just going to ultimately glue that. And then I had the bigger problem of really then having the plastic on the post here buckle. Again, see, it's a little bit marred, actually, in fact. Trying to get that back in place. I mean, ultimately, I might just leave it off and just instead add the back hind legs, because I think that's going to finish off the creature a little bit better. The other thing also, too, is just bring back in the instructions. I mean, while the instructions seem pretty straightforward, down here, for one reason or another, I kind of just got confused as to where, kind of, again, this is the part that you're going to be removing. This back hind leg section is basically going to be fitting in the same hole as what this was. So this was the part I removed, and this is the part that's going to be going in there. And then this is, again, what the finished dog looks like. And then you can choose for yourself exactly how you want to customize it, choosing where exactly you want to have those tentacles. They don't all have to really go necessarily in the way that the instructions tell you. You can really design it exactly the way that you want. It's, say, for example, the longest tentacle, the one that just happens to be a wire-framed. If that is too long for you, simply just remove it. And then, of course, you have many others then to work with, some of which really did belong on the front of the dog if it wasn't for the front of his leg actually breaking off. As we now jump over to the final looks of the dog creature from the thing, one thing I ended up fixing, remember I had the problem with the longer hind legs not attaching properly? I had a simple fix, in fact, of actually grabbing a paintbrush that was of the same diameter, broke off just enough of a piece that I needed to take one end of it and attach it into the hole of the hind legs, and then take the other hole and attach it to the rest of the dog creature. It's one way to work around the idea of gluing things. If you're as reluctant as I am when it comes to gluing anything in place, because that really permanently marries one thing to the other, using a simple dowel that's about the same size, a lot of times you can use like yourself a paintbrush, because paintbrushes, you can always get ones of different sizes, different diameters. Just break off a piece of that, fit it in one end, like I said, fit it in the other. I mean, obviously, moving things around, you might end up having that come loose, but at least you don't have to worry about the problems that are going to go hand in hand with gluing anything together. Putting things on the dog creature, again, was a bit of a struggle. I mean, it took a lot of time, obviously, because you had to take all the individual tentacles and attach them in the provided holes. And there are still holes available on the dog creature where I can attach even more. But then also that one peg just happened to be the thing that broke off on the one leg of the regular dog. Again, I can just glue that in place. The idea really in mind was the idea that you could take the leg off and then just put in 2 other tentacles, but I think that's a little excessive. I'd rather just have the regular legs of the dog. I'm just going to ultimately glue it in place. Is it going to bother me at all? It's going to bother me deep inside to know that something unfortunately had to break on the dog, but at least it's a quick enough fix. I will be gluing that because, again, I'm not having any down the road plans of ever really removing it, unlike maybe the hind legs in the dog creature where maybe I decide down the road I want to change up the configuration. It's got a lot of interesting posability in awkward places just because, again, there's not really a lot of dog that we're dealing with here, but a really nice piece from NECA Toys. Again, very careful you should be if you're looking to pick this one up for yourself. Why did I sound like Yoda? Be very careful, though, if you are picking this one up, that there are a few little tolerances that you're going to have to worry about. The two places I mentioned, at least in this review, is the part that you're going to be removing that one smaller stump of a leg to add the larger hind legs, but then also the legs on the main dog. Just, again, heat that up as best as you can, submerge it in hot water if necessary, just enough that when you are removing it, nothing's going to break, nothing's going to buckle, and no one's going to be crying. Not me, probably you. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you had the chance to pick up the ultimate thing dog creature? And if you have, has there been any casualties? I hate to bring up the bad news again if you guys have been kind of moving on from, you know, the ordeal of having anything break on your figure. But let me know down below in the comment section if you had anything break at all when it came to the ultimate dog creature. Also, again, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you want to stick around for more NECA reviews, I can tell you we have a whole bunch of NECA stuff heading your way. I'm looking at a stack right now that you can't see. Maybe only myself and the dog creature can actually see. But we are going to be looking at a bunch of NECA reviews and upcoming reviews. So upcoming videos. So stay tuned for that. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.